I'm gonna start that now. And so we are officially live on YouTube as well.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, YouTube.
Hi.
Hello.
And hello, all our participants. Hello, Joshua.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for making the time to join us today. I think we're going to give a couple of minutes, right, until 4:05, and then we can start. Yeah. In the meantime, if you have anything pressing or anything you'd like to add or share with us, just do it now. Otherwise, it's okay to be doing something else in the meantime. I think we can also share the link for today's document, right?
Yeah, and you know what you have to do today. There is no nice task for you. Please just leave your name so we can keep track of who is there and who is not. Or, well, we just want to know who is with us here in the call. And yeah, there you can also see the order for those who are presenting their projects. The order again, so you know when your spot is coming up.
Don't forget to tell us which was your role during this cohort. If you are a mentor, an expert, if you're a mentee, probably are very familiar with your work. And yeah, introduce yourselves.
Pablo, yes, we can share the YouTube link. Just give me a second to find it.
Yeah, and you can share the YouTube links with all your friends and peers.
So the YouTube link is now on the chat. Yeah. And so, yeah. For all of those who are on YouTube and never heard of Open Hardware Makers, you're going to learn a little bit about it today, but in a very short sentence, this is a mentoring program online that runs over the course of many weeks, where people learn best practices for open source hardware. So if you are watching this today or later and you do have an open hardware project or would like to learn more about it, you can visit us on openhardware.space. And this is a link already on the YouTube chat as well. So yeah, we would love to hear from you. So if you go onto that link, you can also This is a mentoring program. Oh, wow.
Sorry, that was me because I'm already sharing and I wanted to see the chat of the YouTube channel. All right, let's see. So 1 minute to go.
We have more people joining from the waiting room. And so we're now a total of 22 people in this call, which is fantastic. Thank you very much again for those of you who are joining us today. We're going to share again on the chat for those of you who just joined the link to today's document, where there is more information about this call.
All right, shall we?
We can get going.
Start.
So, Andre, do you want to give it a go?
Sorry, yeah, my Zoom kind of freaked out a little bit here. Yeah.
If you want, I can take it.
No, I mean, it's all solved and fixed. Again, welcome everybody. This is week 15 and the final week of Open Hardware Makers Cohort 1. We're very happy to have you here today. A couple of announcements before we start. Well, you already noticed this call is being streamed on YouTube, and so therefore it's also being recorded. All of the interactions need to respect our community guidelines. If you are having some issues or if there is something going on, please contact us either via the chat here or email, or yeah, I think these are for now the best ways to communicate. And any other problems or questions or anything that is not necessarily related to interactions in the community guideline, you can also shoot us an email on ohwmakers@gmail.com. And so what's Open Hardware Makers, right? I said this in the very beginning, but for those of you who are just joining now and don't know, it's an online mentoring program supporting new and sometimes not so new open hardware projects in the way of acquiring best practices, building welcome and inclusive communities, and connecting to existing networks. Openhardware.space has more information. You can also find the entire curriculum of the program there. So you can actually do this on your own time. You don't have to follow the program to learn best practices on open hardware. We are here on the final week with a public call where we're going to showcase projects. So all of the projects that you're going to see today have gone through this whole program. And today we have a guest talk from Leon Anavi, who has kindly agreed to talk to us about, well, open hardware, but more specifically about his journey from being an open source developer to an open hardware developer, and how he learned the tools of the trade and best practices along the way. Then mentees for this cohort are going to present their projects, 3 minutes for each one of them. And then we're going to have a little wrap up, right? So we hope to do all of this in an hour and a half. So we'll be strict with time for people on their 3-minute presentations, just so we're aware. But yeah, this is what is in for today. So yeah, so today we're going to listen to Leon, who unfortunately had to record his talk because, well, luckily for us, there is a lot of things going on in the open hardware world. And so he's actually going into the Open Next event, which is happening in Berlin this week. And so therefore he couldn't be here today. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Leon Anavi. I'm a senior software engineer and a huge open source enthusiast. Greetings from Plovdiv, Bulgaria. Unfortunately, I'm not able to make it to this call in person, so this is a pre-recorded video. Recently over Twitter, Open Hardware Makers contacted me and invited me as a guest speaker so that I can share with you my journey with open source hardware. I believe all of you are familiar with the idea about open source hardware, but let's just summarize what are the benefits of using open source hardware. Open source hardware gives confidence that the design will be available if the original manufacturer stops production or stops selling in certain regions. If you are buying some kind of industrial equipment, it's really good in long term to have it open source hardware, because this means that over the years you can maintain it, you can even improve the design. Furthermore, open source hardware keeps the prices low and fair. If you make open source hardware that's super expensive, nobody will buy it, because everyone will see the bill of materials and say, hey, wait a minute, this is too expensive, I can do this in 5 times less. So if you are doing open source hardware, you have to offer it at reasonable prices in order to stay in business. Furthermore, open source hardware allows you repairing and maintaining the hardware. You have all the schematics. That means that you can easily understand if something breaks and repair it. Furthermore, open source hardware enables customizations and integrations in third-party products. This means that you can have one product that's open source hardware, you can grab it, you can integrate it in your product, and have a final product that includes multiple different open source hardware projects within it. Most important is that open source hardware is all about sharing knowledge, educating students, and getting feedback and contributions from the community. The key word here is community. In open source, it's all about the community. You can always do a one-man project, but you need people in order to make good, big projects over time. So there's so many things that claim to be open source hardware, but are they really open source hardware? Are they sharing all the schematics so that you can reproduce it and other people can make it and even sell it. This is a very difficult question, and the answer to this question is provided by the Open Source Hardware Association, which is a legal entity from the United States. They maintaining the so-called Open Source Hardware Certification Program. This is a directory with various open source hardware projects which have been independently identified as open source hardware solutions. The Open Source Hardware Certification Program ensures that the definition of open source hardware by a specific project matches the community definition of open source hardware. This means that anyone can use, study, modify, or even sell this open source hardware device. The Open Source Hardware Certification Program provides a unique ID for certificate hardware based on the country code and a number. For example, as we have it here, I'm from Bulgaria, so the hardware that I'm certifying as part of the open source hardware certification starts with prefix BG, which is the country code of Bulgaria, followed by unique number. Furthermore, the Open Source Hardware Certification Program provides a unique logo for the certified projects, which it's up to you, the maker, to decide whether to put it on your product or not to put it. To get started with the certification program, you should visit certification.oshwa.org. The whole thing is free, and I believe all of you have something to share. So if you haven't certified it yet, please go to certification.oshwa.org and submit your project. So the really important question is, does it make any sense to use expensive proprietary software for designing open source hardware? Is it worth doing it? Can you build a sustainable community if someone who wants to modify your project needs to pay gazillions just for a license to use the software with which he can edit and modify the open source hardware you did? And the answer is straightforward and simple. No. No, no, no. It doesn't make any sense to use proprietary software tools to design open source hardware. Because of this, I would like to mention that it's super important to use free and open source software in order to design open source hardware. This way you can build up a community. This way more people can freely contribute back and use your project. The ingredients of an open source device are actually several things. It's not just the hardware, it's not just the software. You also need the documentation. So in order to have a successful project, based on my personal experience, you need to combine all these things together so that you can have customers, build community, and grow your project over time. There are so many tools you can use, and this is just a short list. I hope you're already using some of them. If you want to design a printed circuit board, I highly recommend you to use KiCad. This is software that supports designing print circuit boards on multiple layers. It runs on Microsoft Windows, it runs on Mac OS, and it also runs on Linux, and actually I'm using it on Linux. Other options are FritzSync, which is more basic and more simple for designing more like wiring diagrams, GEDA, and there are many other tools which deserve a normal mention. However, once again, I repeat, if you are in doubt, use KiCad. I highly recommend you using this. Of course, picking up the tool for designing your printed circuit board is kind of a religion. If you are using Ego or Altium, probably you are you're not going to easily switch to KiCad, but please give it a try. It's worth it. Here is an example of a very complex project made with KiCad. Olimex is actually a company from my hometown, from Plovdiv, Bulgaria. Also, we are good neighbors and friends, and they have designed this board with A64 called A64 All-in-Oxino. It's with an all-winners 64-bit ARM CPU, and you can see it's a 6-layer printed circuit board with really complex design, and KiCad is good for this. It can do this board, and most probably KiCad is good for your board and project as well. There are also many free and open source computer-aided design designs softwares. These are softwares which allow you to design 3D cases for 3D printing or for acrylic cutting, or even a more sophisticated design of cases with, let's say, molding or something like this. And a good case is super important for any product. So here's a short list. OpenSCAD, I really like it because with OpenSCAD you basically write software, write source code, and it generates the 3D model for you. And as I've mentioned in the beginning, my primary job is as a software engineer, so I do a lot of programming. That's why I like OpenSCAD. Other options are QCAD, FreeCAD, LibreCAD, SourceSpacer, and of course Blender. Blender is very sophisticated software, super sophisticated software for 3D modeling and animations. But you can, if you have the craft to use Blender, you can use these skills to apply them for, let's say, industrial design of enclosures and cases. In the previous slide, I've also mentioned that based on my experience with open source hardware, documentation is really important thing. And here comes a short list of options what you can use for making good documentation of an open source hardware project. So of course, no matter what kind of technology you use to write the documentation, you still have to put a lot of efforts and to write the actual content. But we have options with markdowns. Actually, this is the preferred option by me. I just share my projects in GitHub using appropriate licenses, and the documentation is a markdown which with PandaDoc I convert from markdown to PDF. Other options that you can have a look at are LaTeX, HTML, of course, MediaWiki with the wiki markup. Basically, this is what Wikipedia uses. DocWiki is an alternative. Wikifactory, another alternative. Read the Docs is pretty powerful and nice too. I've already mentioned that I'm using PanDoc to convert files from one markup format to another, in my case from Markdown to PDF. And there's also something going on in Germany. They're trying to create a specification to define the standards for documentation of open source hardware projects. That is pretty cool. I don't know if it's gonna work, because this is something that's happened in Germany. They have their own institute doing it, but why not? Maybe it will become worldwide standard. We'll see over time. One of the important things for each project is how to keep the versions. And over the years, I have seen that most of the hardware engineers are really bad with this. And on the other hand, we have really good craft for this when we're speaking about software. So what I do for my project is that I'm taking the software approach and applying it for version control of the hardware, which means that I'm using Git, and I'm using one of the popular services which provides Git as a service, GitHub. Of course, GitHub is not entirely open source, so I fully understand people who prefer GitLab. Probably this is the better choice. Other options for using Git as a service are Bitbucket or SourceForge. And of course, if you don't like Git, there are alternatives. Mercurial is a decentralized version control system just like Git, but it's not that popular. And also we have centralized version control systems such as Subversion. Once again, based on my experience, I highly recommend you to use Git. So let me talk a little bit more about things that I have created using some of the tools that I've shared with you in the previous slides. My first open source KiCad project from scratch was called Anavi Infrared Fat. This is an add-on board for Raspberry Pi that I've designed 5 years ago, and actually I have updated since then. It's available in GitHub, so just type the name and you find it out. And actually during FOSDEM 2017, I've shared my experience how I've designed this. So if you are interested to learn more what is a Raspberry Pi hat, which stands for hardware attached on top, there is a very strict specification by the Raspberry Pi Foundation how to design add-on boards for Raspberry Pi if you want to call them hats. Just visit this talk. It's a little bit older. There are 5 years since then, but it's pretty cool, and I'm sure it's going to be interesting for you if you are interested in Raspberry Pi open source hardware and add-on boards. So over the years, I have designed many things. Here are some photos of the things that I have designed. All of them are open source hardware. As you can see here, we have a lot of Internet of Things for home automation. We have add-on boards, some mechanical keyboards. Actually, I am even using a mechanical keyboard to record this presentation. Here it is. It's a mechanical keyboard with a display powered by the open source firmware QMK. So yeah, we have so many projects which are now real open source hardware devices, even tools like this fume extractor over here. And I'm using the services of CrowdSupply to crowdfund these projects. Even at the moment, there is a crowdfunding campaign going on at CrowdSupply for an add-on board for Raspberry Pi called Anavi InfoMicroHat. It again follows the specifications and the requirements by the Raspberry Pi Foundation how to design a hat, or a micro hat in this case. It's a super simple project due to the lack of enough chips, due to the global chip shortage. I've decided to do this super small project, which basically has no chips. It's a bunch of connectors which allow you to add a mini I2C OLED display and bunch of sensors to your Raspberry Pi. It has an EEPROM which contains device tree binary overlay information. Basically, this is a software description of the hardware. This way, the Raspberry Pi OS, once it boots, which is actually a Linux distribution, once it boots, it understands what kind of hardware has been attached on top of it. So thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this really short talk. Sorry again that I'm not able to be in person with you. Just to summarize again with the conclusions, in my opinion, it is super cool that you are already familiar with what open source hardware is, what are the benefits of open source hardware. Please consider using free and open source software for designing your hardware. If you want to learn more about a certification program by the Open Source Hardware Association, please visit their website. I have added some links over here. If you want to get in touch with me, visit anavi.technology. This is the brand under which I'm publishing open source hardware. If you're interested in selling your open source hardware to other people, visit CrowdSupply if you want to make a crowdfunding campaign. They have a great team. It's super easy to get started with them, especially if you are thinking for a long-term solution based on which you can have a sustainable development of your business model based on open source. OpenNext is initiative for bringing open source hardware by small and medium enterprises in the European Union. Visit their website to learn more. And also, if you already have an open source hardware project and you need market for it and you would like to ship it to customers, check out Tindi or Lectrons. Tindi is a company based in the United States. They're part of the Hackaday network. They have a really great community, and Lectrons is something new which is focusing on the European Union. Once again, thank you very much. May the open source be with you, and hope to see you next time on the next meeting. Thanks again.
Right, so we have an asynchronous thank you to Anavi, who will probably take a look at this YouTube recording later on. We thought it was nice to have a talk by someone like Anavi in this last closing public call of the first cohort of Open Hardware Makers, because if you noticed, and this will probably be more evident for the mentees and the mentors in this call, Anavi touched on every single module of our curriculum, right? He talked about in 15 minutes. It was amazing. He talked about project management, version control, documentation formats, findability and documentation standards, OSHA certification, and building communities and CrowdSupply. So that was like an amazing summary. But we are super aware also, and we wanted to make sure that he's someone with a software engineering background. So there are things that will apply to his projects that won't apply to your project, as you probably saw. And the pathway that he's going through that we think is really interesting, which is trying to get your prototypes funded, and for example through platforms like Crowdsupply. This may not be the pathway for you, but this is one pathway that we think is really interesting to explore if you want to grow your project. So I think this was a really interesting talk to have, and thank you again, Anavi, especially with the idea of using open source software for designing open source hardware, which is key for accessibility. We are going to move now. Also, if you have questions or if you have any comments that you would like to send Anavi, you can feel free to send them to us or contact him through his networks. If you have seen the chat, I've been dropping some links there related to his work. Yeah, so just feel free to send your questions there. And we are going to move on now to the main part of this public call, which is coming to an end of the cohort 1. We're going to learn in a very short time, because we have many projects, what each project has been up to during this time, what's the project about. And if you go again to the notes that you will find in the chat, you will probably find some more information about the projects there. So without much further ado, let's go and learn about Blue Grease, Sparrows and Simon.
Open technologies empower people, and water is the essence of life. So how about we all come together to create solutions in makerspaces that can make clean water from almost any dirty water. Our goal is to have a design which can make 100 liters of fresh water per day using solar energy. So we are Blue Grease, and we are democratizing drinking water technology with open source hardware. Because we believe open source is a wonderful methodology to bring out the best solutions. And open source software has already proven that point. By bringing this applied philosophy to the hardware space, there are many benefits. For example, systems can be built and maintained locally. Also, we can bridge the gaps between all the needed expertise, from social science to engineering, and also we can work effortlessly together beyond hierarchies, beyond cultures. So we're creating a space in favor of true solutions without compromise. And also, it's a permanent frame. So the question is not, are we going to make it? The question is rather, how can we keep creating solutions that become better and better? So the evolution of the solution is yet another advantage of open source compared to conventional linear innovation. So what have we done so far? We've been prototyping our concept with hundreds of contributors. So now we are ready to show up and start developing the technology. We've got a first design draft as a basis for discussion. So we're reaching out to you. Do you want to support communities, maybe even your own, to have access to safe drinking water? So for the technology development, we're looking for makers and engineers to co-create the core technology. And we're also looking for someone specifically familiar with Autodesk Fusion 360. For the organizational development, we're looking for people familiar with decentralized governance and leadership, because a new type of innovation also requires a new type of organization. And also because we've got first indicators that history is going to repeat itself, and open source hardware will receive resistance just like open source software did. But we're not here to fight the current status. Rather, we're here to unite with positivity to create new solutions. In this spirit, our venture will be guided by the wisdom of turtles, holistic and peaceful creatures. So what the penguins have done for operating systems, the turtles will do it for drinking water. So if you're interested to flow with us, drop us a mail at turtles@bluegrease.org. We can find out how we can flow together and actively support the claim, water is a human right. Thank you, Open Hardware Makers. It's been really a true pleasure to be with you. Thanks.
All right. So after that, just wanted to mention what is already in the chat. Simon is here on the call. So if you have questions, comments, anything you want to leave for him, just do it in the chat. Feel free to reach out. And thank you again, Simon. I am sorry that I don't have time now for questions. We are going to see all the presentations, and if you want to stay on the call afterwards, that's perfectly fine. Right. So we're going to move on now to the project Cybots, which was a project run by a team, but we have, I think, Sheldon on the call. Sheldon, if you want to unmute yourself. I don't see.
Sheldon, are you there?
I see him there, but I don't know if he's listening actually to us. We can.
I was going to say, I guess in the interest of time, we can move on to the next one while Sheldon sorts things out, and then we can come back to this later.
Yes. So next project is Ihear. Lawrence, I think you're on the call.
Can I take over the presentation?
Go ahead.
Share my screen?
Yeah.
Let's see. This should be it. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. I can't see it, but I believe it's good. All right. So we're part of an organization called Engineering Good. This organization every year organizes a festival called Tech for Good, where students work on problem statements that have been submitted by a community with the focus on assistive tech. And we joined the Open Hardware Makers program because every year at the end of this festival, we end up with a bunch of ideas that needs work being done, mostly by volunteers. And we're looking for more structure, maybe a framework to build these products out and bring them to the next level, ideally get them in the hands of the users. So joining the Open Hardware Makers program, we chose the Ihear project, one of the most recent projects that we worked on. So the students came up with the idea to basically take the design of the Google Glass and use that for people with hearing disabilities to transcribe spoken text on a little screen. And this problem came about during COVID. People with masks, it's hard to lip read for people with hearing disabilities. And they built an initial prototype that was almost working. And we tried to take it to the next level. So we had a couple iterations. We moved different types of hardware. We ended up using a Raspberry Pi. We're using the Google Translate API, the speech-to-text API to transcribe the text. We could translate in a future version. And we ended up with a working prototype. So this working prototype has been given to a couple of the users and the community, and we received a lot of feedback. But this is also the point where we got a little bit stuck because we weren't necessarily sure how to take it to the next level. And I think during the whole program, we've learned a lot on basically where we got stuck and what the next step should be. So that brings me to the conclusion. And this statement, 80% of the satisfaction comes from 20% of the work. And this applies to me very much, but I think it applies to a lot of people. I was one of the volunteers working on a little bit of the 3D design, a bit of the software. But what I've learned during this whole program is there's actually quite a lot more to building a successful product. But also, that's the next point, it is actually quite a bit of effort to enable people to contribute. Right? It's not as easy to just ask people just to help you. I think we've learned a lot about having a roadmap, having the documentation ready, and being able to really get contribution. And I think that's where we are right now. The Ihear project might not move into the next stage, but we still have a long list of other projects that we're working on. So I want to thank everyone for all the past weeks that we've worked. I've learned a lot, and I think the rest of the team did as well. And hopefully we can take future projects to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Lots of wisdom in those last minutes. Alex, I don't know if you can share in your screen. Thank you. So next project we have is Chigubu. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I'll try my best. The Chigubu lantern from Aluwainen. Is Aluwainen on the call? I think he is, but we also have a video.
I think he joined the call. Yes, I just have to
Yes.
see if he's, yeah.
My name is Aluen Manyonga, and my project is on Chigubu Lantern. Chigubu Lantern is an LED lantern made from electronic waste and housed inside plastic waste bottles. The lantern got its name from the housing, which are plastic waste bottles, and these are called Chigubu in Shona, a Zimbabwean local language.
First Chigubu lantern was made in 2018, but I started to put more work into the lanterns in 2020 when I won the SAO Young Lighter Award. So currently, I have managed to distribute 24 lanterns to a primary school, which is in Zimbabwe. And these lanterns are benefiting the teachers and a few students at the school.
The project is centered around students and teachers who do not have access to high quality and reliable lighting. The ultimate goal of this project is ensuring a light for every student in those areas that have poor access to electricity. Making the Chigubu Lantern project open can help it benefit more students in marginalized areas on how they can make their own lanterns using resources that are available to them. That is electronic waste from LED lights, lithium-ion batteries, and other electronic components. Then they can house their lanterns in plastic waste bottles. After going through the Open Hardware Makers program, I learned a lot of things, and the next step will be implementing the project and finding ways to make it reach the rural areas. To make this project a success, I'll need help in building many other various circuits which use electronic waste to make the LED lantern. These circuits include driving circuits for LEDs and charging circuits for the batteries that will be used inside the lanterns. I also need help in coming up with ways on how we can make user guides and developer guides available to rural areas which usually do not have internet access. Thank you.
I think he's in the call, so also if you have questions or comments, you can leave them here. Thank you so much for this presentation. I love this project. I think it's really cool. And next we are going to move on to the microfluidic testing rig. Ruya, if you are in the call, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I share my screen? Because I need some permission.
Hold on. You need permission to share your screen.
Oh yeah, okay. I can
I think
guess.
you're able to. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Hello everyone, I'm Ruya. I'm doing PhD in pharmacy in University of Reading, UK. Today I'm going to talk about imaging ring for microfluidic blood analysis. Yeah, given the central importance of blood coagulation to cardiovascular health and disease, measurements of these processes both in patients and health research participants remain critical. Conventional coagulation assays have been automated, but much research still relies on more complex laboratory assays that can be time-consuming, expensive laboratories, and require personnel with specific technical training. This drives a need for more efficient and cost-effective coagulation tests. So I'm working with Biomedical Technology Lab and the Platelet Society in Reading to develop a new portable and cheap assay by combining the microfluidics and platelet function tests. So it can be used in hospitals, clinics, and blood labs to test coagulation and to examine anticoagulant drugs for large-scale epidemiological studies. Here is my rig. Open source and open hardware robotic imaging rig has time-lapse imaging, movement, and light, all of them by controlling Raspberry Pi. This system allows detailed analysis of fluid properties of blood following activation of coagulation cascade. Conventional coagulation assays are expensive and not accessible to everyone. So everyone who would like to work with blood can build their system because we shared all the information in GitLab. Thanks to being open, I can share this idea publicly and the community can learn about my project. And I hope this will lead to project's improvement in the future. Also, thanks to being open, I could participate in this program, and this program helped me to improve my documentation. My next step, I've been working on a paper, so I will publish it to spread the idea to the world. And the more people will know about my project and they can build it and they can use it, thanks to being open. I will need beta testers, other people who will try to reproduce it. And I will need some help with programming. And thank you. This is my GitHub page, and you can check it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruya. That was really great. If you can paste that link in the chat so anyone can access it, that would be really helpful. And again, thank you so much for your presentation. Remember, you can always leave comments or questions for the mentees in our chat. So we are going to move on now to our next project, which is building FM radios. I think Andrew Wafela is in the call. Andrew, just unmute yourself.
Andrew, hello, are you there?
I can see him, but I cannot hear him.
Yeah. Can you?
I asked him to unmute. I cannot unmute it, just like that. Andrew, if you are there, let's try to unmute yourself. If not, we can.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Hello. I'm having difficulties in the place I'm accessing. There's a lot of noise.
Andrew, we cannot hear you. We have the usual problem with the audio. We are really sorry. That's why some projects are recorded because of the connectivity issues.
Okay.
Maybe try turning off the video to see if that improves the voice.
I'd actually say in regard. Okay, I think I'm really sorry. I think in respect to the time, we should actually move on because I think the connectivity issues won't be solved in a minute. I hope this is fine with you, Andrew. Andrew, you can send us maybe a recorded video and we uploaded it to our channel so everybody can see it then afterwards, and we share it via our networks if this is fine.
Yeah, and of course, if you have any links that you can share, do it in the chat. He's in a noisy background. That's what he means. Yeah, we know, but we had these connectivity issues in the past also, and that's why we were asking for recordings in this case. But unfortunately, we didn't receive one in time. But we are totally open to receive one after the call and upload it, or share any links in the chat if that is fine. I'm super interested in hearing your presentation. Please upload the recording. That's for you, Andrew. Yeah, me too. I really want to hear it. So please share the recording. All right. Okay. moving on to the next project, we are going to hear from Andreas and Alex. I think Andreas will be sharing about the project Stereo Ninja.
Yes, hello. I hope my video quality is better. So yeah, my name is Andreas Kahler. I'm from the Fab Lab München, the Fab Lab in Munich, Germany, and I'll be presenting Stereo Ninja. Stereo Ninja is a DIY digital stereo microscope. So it's a stereo microscope, but digital, and of course it's open hardware. So before I continue, first of all, lots of thanks to the Open Hardware Makers team for making this whole program possible. Thanks a lot, it was really great. Lots of thanks also to our personal mentor, Adel Zavari, and finally to my team colleagues. Alex couldn't make it today, but thanks a lot, Alex, for your help and for the others who helped with this project. So, as I said, Stereo Ninja is a microscope, but digital. And let me quickly show it to you. So this is a prototype we actually had before the program already, but we improved it since then. It's based on a Raspberry Pi as well. It's a Raspberry Pi compute module in our case, and it works with 2 cameras, and 2 cameras because we want to have stereo vision, and the display is on a monitor because it's digital. And to really have like the real deal for stereo vision, you need to have stereo goggles for this monitor. Unfortunately, I cannot show that to you in real. What have we done during the program? We worked a lot on technical stuff, but the real thing was on a GitHub page. So we worked a lot there. We uploaded our files, we assigned licenses. We now have a proper vision. So it was really helpful just to discuss things in the team, what we actually want to do, what we want to achieve. And now on a GitHub page, there is like a roadmap, and we have a to-do list, which is really helpful just to work on stuff. And the things we want to do next is we want to finalize our next milestone until summer. So it's not a long time, but I can only show you a prototype of the next version. So that's a 3D printed base and a mechanical arm. And this is our new camera head. It's not working yet, but it's still a little bit to go for the summer. And what we want to do then is reach out for the community, find people who are interested in this project, see if they can build them the project themselves, and then work together, improve the thing, get feedback, and yeah, just find more people interested in this. So thanks again, Open Hardware Makers team, and thanks for your interest.
Thank you, Andrea. Well, that's great. If you want to, again, share some of the links in the chat for those of our participants that may not be accessing the doc. And we are going to move on now to project Automatic Water Dispenser by Richard. I have seen him in the call. I don't know, Richard, if you can hear me and you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Well, mine is about the automatic water dispenser. And I'm Richard Malamu from Rhinocam Refugee Settlement in Uganda. Open this. So this is a description of my project. It's actually aimed at providing untouchable water dispensers to schools in the refugee settlement, we don't have really very many schools, but the few that we have, with the number of refugees in it, I noticed over during the COVID-19, it was really difficult for a lot of students students and pupils to respect the order or some of the protocol of the SOPs. Then I thought of why not maybe come up with some simple solutions that cannot cost a lot of money, but of course effective and can sort out some of the challenges in the camp. The first one, I had this was my first prototype of the water dispenser. You know, it was not really well organized and having actually some few components and also some few components, and also having some issues with the codings and so on. But you know, as a due course of the mentorship, we're able to finally come up with this, which is one of our, though it's a final prototype for this, but we're still working on developing it. And we hope to see this get into a better shape and better and over different sizes, of course. So we had a number of challenges as we're working on this. You know, as being a refugee, it's difficult to have access to tools and materials. And sometimes when we order for some of these tools, there's a lot of delays, and it took us long. That's why we were able to finalize our final prototype some 3 days back. And then also the issues of fund and power and connectivity. In the due course of the mentorship, I was able to collaboratively work with people in the forum. We could ask, they could actually contribute, and we're able to come up with that. We're also able to, I was able to get access to some new open source tools that I never get used to, but as a result of using it for a number of days, I was able to also learn. And also have this, we're able to share knowledge, like people could ask me, I could also ask, and yeah, like I said, we were able to develop this together. So my future plans for the project is to train more refugees on other tech ideas, some open source ideas. This is not a final one, but we don't know what challenges maybe some other outbreaks that may come in future that may need also an open source solutions to. So we are yet to train more people so that they can creatively develop their own prototypes in case of emergencies like the COVID-19. And also we're looking into continuing developing the project. And yeah, so, and the last one is having probably access to funding, because that's actually one of our main challenge. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard. That was a great update on your project, and I'm very excited to see next steps. We can again remember, if you want to leave any links, use the chat. If you want to leave any questions for Richard, he is in the call. Use the chat for questions. We are going to move on now to the next project of the cohort 1, which is a project from Argentina called Cámara de Respiración de Suelo. That's they will explain it better in the video they sent.
Hi everyone, I'm Pablo Cremades, and together with Nano Castro we are part of the Rigos team working on the development of an open source, low-cost soil respiration chamber prototype to measure CO2 flux from the soil. Why is this important? Soil respiration is closely related to soil carbon cycle and microbial activity. Microorganisms carry the nutrients that plants need, so soil respiration is a key indicator of soil health. The project is aimed at farmers, students, and researchers, especially those involved in local agroecological transition that want to investigate and learn about the role of soil respiration on carbon and nutrient cycle. The chamber has a carbon dioxide sensor inside a closed tube. Once the chamber is placed in the soil, the CO2 concentration inside the chamber begins to increase over time. The rate of this increment is a measurement of microbial activity. But of course, this activity depends on other parameters as well, such as soil temperature and moisture, so the chamber also has soil moisture and temperature sensors. Our design goals were low cost, the local availability of components, and flexibility, a portable device that could be sensor agnostic. Our current prototype includes a control unit based on an Arduino Uno board and a measurement chamber equipped with an infrared sensor to measure the soil CO2 flux. Data is displayed on an LCD screen and sent via Bluetooth to a Python application running on a PC for real-time visualization and later processing. If you don't have a PC at hand, any mobile device with Bluetooth capability and a serial Bluetooth app works as well. In our context of slow science and tech investment, open source development is almost the only way to acquire scientific instruments. Moreover, we think that open is the fastest way to build not only good scientific tools, but also, and more important, impactful knowledge around them. This project was born open thanks to the initial collaboration with Hackteria. Our first prototype was a replica of their version, and it was built during the first Rigos residence in 2019 in Porto Alegre, Brazil. This year, we worked on a second prototype together with physics students from Facultad de Ciencias Exactas y Naturales and students from CEFIC, Centro de Educación, Formación e Investigación Campesina. Some decisions were based on the CEFIC needs. We keep our collaboration with Hackteria in the context of Project Euros, ubiquitous rural open science hardware, to develop an IoT prototype that would send data over the internet and make it publicly available in real time. These are our contact points. We would love to hear from people interested in using this prototype for agroecology or conservation projects. Of course, all collaborations are very welcome. This project is part of a large effort to build an open agroecology lab by integrating open source tools into a rural lab. We expect to have a big impulse during the second Rigos residence here in Mendoza in September. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pablo and Nano. I know you're in the call again. Feel free to be able to ask questions. Another great project. I love them all. I'm a big fan of all the projects here at Open Hardware Makers. We are going to move now to our next project, Shazam for Bats and Birds. I think Cohort is in the call. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yes, hello. So I'm going to share my screen. Cool. So my project was called Shazam for Bats and Birds, and the idea was basically to build. The idea was to build a device that basically automate the classification of birds and bats. This was based on a previous device that was old hardware and that was not open source, that was classifying bats, and then also new device that is open source and classifying birds. And that was the idea, to combine that both together. But open source, what I learned during this project, is also working smart, which means, do you start a project from scratch, or do you avoid to reinvent the wheel, and do you try to contribute? So this was a lot about thinking, what are the missing elements in the timeline that I have? Do you have the time to write some new software and hardware for all this complicated task? And during my project, I found a very good open community, which you can see has a lot of interaction, which is a BirdNet Pi that already took a classification algorithm for birds on a Raspberry Pi. So I look into the repo, and they didn't have a very nice enclosure for engaging the people with the sensor. And this is where I'm starting to design the enclosure. Into prototyping, learning laser cutting, and finalizing building an enclosure and testing the bird with people. And this is also for developing the next partnership and helping me contributing to the next step of developing an efficient and IoT system for bats classification. So here's a workshop that was happening last week, where 20 people came to test this wooden enclosure and build a device to learn more about birds. Next step will be finally to implement the 2B of Shazam, the bats. But bats are more complicated than birds because they have ultrasonic spectrum. So I thank the BirdNetPy community, especially Patrick, for helping me to contribute to this project, but also the OHM program maker for learning more about the step of open hardware and where to start and how to find ideas and how to contribute. Thanks a lot, and reach out if you want to know more.
Thank you all. That was a great presentation. And we are going to move on now to our next project. I don't know, Alex, if you can share your screen. It's a digital oscilloscopes by Elise Javsia. Elise, are you on the call?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Javsia Elise. I'm from Boa Lab in Cameroon. My project is about digital stethoscopes. What the project of modern stethoscope remains a significant barrier to physician and allied health professionals practicing in low and middle income countries where few affordable high quality exist.
Hi, Shraddha's asking you to accept her invite. Accept her in.
Hello?
Hello, Elise, I
Yeah,
hear you, but we heard some background noise. Yeah.
Okay. So the objective is to be able to limit the prolonged contact of the nursing staff with the patient and to have a device which can be placed by the patient, but interpreted by the practitioner. So 3D technologies have recently proven their efficiency and speed in the medical sector, allowing many projects to see the light of day during the COVID-19 crisis. Faced with the shortage of certain medical equipment and devices, makers, manufacturers, services, and players in the 3D printing sector have mobilized to 3D printing respirator, protective visor, swabs, and connected devices to facilitate medical teleconsultation. This new paradigm, I propose to design an open source wireless 3D printed digital stethoscope. How does it work? We have a 3D printed membrane of the stethoscope connected to an omnidirectional microscope, 3.5 meter, which also that is connected to an LM393 sensor and the Bluetooth module so that the doctor can visualize the pulse rate in a phone with the Arduino Android application and even listen to the beat, to the heart rate beating with Bluetooth AirPods if he wants. So the importance of open source in this project is the fact that it will allow us for reproducibility and dissemination to a large community. And all the remarks made by the open hardware maker community of experts will be taken into account in order to perpetuate this project evolve. For the next steps, I will introduce an AI of sound detection within the device. So that's what I wanted to present today for my project Digital Stethoscope. One of the main difficulties I went through is about sensors acquisition, but I was able to acquire them in Germany. Most of the made of an LM393 module, the omnidirectional microphone controller, and the Bluetooth AirPods. So that's all about my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again to the OS designing such a good program for us.
Thank you, Elise, Shavsia, and thank you for participating. We want to if you are all here and you're not very familiar with OHM, we deal with lots of connectivity issues with some of our participants, and we try to help and try to, I don't know, help contribute to having a better participation sometimes with internet megabytes and everything, but it's really hard. So we really appreciate your participation, Elisa. We are now moving forward to the next, last project in our call today. It's Michael from FlexiTier.
I appreciate it. Share my screen. Oh, sorry. There we go. Share my screen.
Yeah. Good.
This is the FlexiTier project. I am Dr. Michael Anderson. I am a staff scientist at Boston Children's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, United States. So transepithelial resistance, or TIR, is about looking at a cell layer and looking at really ion flux through the cells and the junctions between cells themselves. So typically, when laboratories utilize this, they're going to be leveraging something called a trans-well insert. It has a semi-permeable membrane, you grow cells on them, and then how they're typically going to be utilizing that is, let me put my electrodes in and let me see what my resistance is. And they use that to look at tight junctional formation, and they know when the culture is ready. But that's a very limited view of what's possible in this. That type of resistance can fluctuate not just with development of the cell layer, but functions of time, circadian rhythm things. You can use it for drug screens that change that resistiveness of the cells through, say, paracellular transport. You can do genetic manipulations to do it. You can pair this with microscopy, microfluidics, use different models such as organoid models on these. None of these really are ever leveraged. It's a very limited view of how people are utilizing it. And part of it is the equipment. Your standard piece of equipment here is going to be your EVOM2. They're manual electrodes. The placement's going to be a little iffy. Every single time you do it, you're pulling your culture out of the incubation system to accomplish this, to taking it out of its native environment. Even an automated system, while you can do more wells with it, you still pull it out. How am I going to hook a microscope up to that and do that at the same time on the imaging? It's impossible. It's not even in the incubation system with it too. So I've looked around, there are no open source alternatives to these sort of devices you see over here. So what I thought about doing with this FlexiTier is I wanted something that was flexible. I can put it on anything I want, microfluidic, just make exactly what people have already made, but for cheaper. Put it on microfluidic devices, be able to modulate the electrical characteristics of it, and document it in a way that people can trust it. Because you're not going to make scientific papers out of this if you can't even trust the device works well. So where we're currently at with this is I derived all the theory for it. We've made a basic schematic and designed a PCB. But it's not good enough. I'm a physicist. I know the theory well. I know microscopy and optics well. I have an interest in electrical engineering, and I know some things, but it's not to the level needed for this project. I really need someone that actually knows this stuff, preferably in the realm of electrophysiology, hardware development, to help me make this design practical and effective. And additionally, it could be the same person as someone else, just knows how to design PCBs and really follow the documentation provided by the components well. I need accessories for this. We don't just want to make a device, we want to use it. Chamber holders for incubation systems, making this work with a microscope. Those are all available that I need help with. Electrode design. I don't know enough about electrode design theory. You know how to do that? It'd be excellent to be adding into these accessories. And we need people to help document this, actually make good guides, good media, so people understand it's available, how to build it, and what it does. And just testing the equipment. So if you would like to join it, well, what's in it for you? I think you would get to contribute to meaningful research and making the research go in directions that it hasn't currently went into. It could be maybe you have an interest more in the microscopy side of it, having it applied with that. You can drive this into that direction if that's what interests you. Of course, I think it's interesting. And anyone that does meaningful contributions to the project, obviously, you'd all become co-authors on any papers to me, which could be, helpful for your careers. If you're interested in it, you can contact me at my email address on the slide. And I want to make it clear, you don't have to come in with some groundbreaking idea if you'd like to join it. We can talk about things, what you're interested in, what you're good at, and I'm sure we could find some place for you if you think it's interesting and you like where it's going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. That was really, really interesting. And there is a common thing for all projects. We are incentivizing people to ask for help. What do they need? What's the next step, and where they need help? We have finished hearing from the projects, but I think there are a couple of common threads that have appeared. I like how we have seen a super complex picture of projects that go from the very mechanical to the very software and electronics layers, and also projects that are just starting and projects that have already some pathway done. So Alex will now lead us into the closing and next steps for our program. I'm super happy with hearing all of these projects, so just please take over.
Yeah, thank you very much. I today have the best job ever because I can thank you now very much. First of all, our mentees for participating in OHM in Open Hardware Makers, for the mentors actually mentoring the mentees. Thank you very much for your help. Without you, this would not be possible. Thank you very much also goes to our experts. So for those who don't know, we have a group of experts in our, in our team as well, in our overarching OHM team. And they reviewed the project around in the middle of the program. And the one or other, as far as I know, also integrated a lot of the feedback they got and were really happy about how helpful that actually was. So, dear experts, thank you very much. So, what are now the next steps? Please, for our mentees, mentors, and also experts, please don't forget to complete the feedback form. You can always, become also a mentor. If you finish the Open Hardware Mentoring Program as a mentee, you can always tell us. And if you want to become a mentor, well, you are free to do so. We will put you into our list and then let's see. But, well, if we have a call for mentors, we also need to have a new cohort. And I'm happy to now announce our next cohort. It will be a science-focused one. We can't share now the exact date when we will start it, but we will start after the summer break. That's for sure. Please just be sure to follow us on all our channels, so you will get to know when we call for participation, call for projects.
Just one note: summer break in what month is that? So after August, right? We will learn about this after August.
Yes, we will learn about it after August. I'm sorry, summer is in the whole world at a different time. Sorry about that. After August, you will learn about it after August. Yeah, but if you are already in contact with us, you will probably get an email. If you want to get in contact with us, you can leave your addresses via the contact forms on our webpage. There are also forms for becoming experts to get into our expert database. So we also welcome all the mentees, also mentors, and people who are watching now and think, well, I would like to contribute to this. Please feel free, go to our website, openhardware.space, and it should be obvious which form you have to fill out to become either a mentor or an expert. All right. Please Juli, Andre, did I forget something, or can I release everybody?
No, I think, well, Andre is there with Sophia, if you want to say something.
No, I think just for the mentees, we're gonna send you guys feedback form soon to evaluate the program. So please keep an eye out for that. This should come out like latest by the end of this week. But yeah, that's it. And this would really, really help us to improve the program. We want to learn the good, the bad, and the ugly. So please make sure to fill that out once you get it. This would be extremely helpful. And as Alex said, thank you everybody who made this program happen. It was, yeah, great. Thank you.
I would like to add that because the program finishes doesn't mean that you have to disconnect absolutely from this community. In fact, we would like projects to stay in touch. We have seen along the life of this cohort that projects needed help in different things. Some projects needed help in project management or defining the scope a little better. Other projects are more in the technical phase, so they need more help with documentation and getting contributors, or others with growing communities. So there are very different stages, and we hope that keeping connected to our community will help you in the future. The best way to do that is, we think, is GOSH Forum. I think you all know where the forum is at this point and how to find our category in the forum, but if not, we will send a link in the chat again. And yeah, stay in touch. We have seen already how projects start to collaborate with another, and we would like to see more and more of that. Of course, if you want to return as a mentor or an expert, as Alex mentioned, you are most welcome. And yeah, that's all for me. Just very grateful to having organized this, co-organized this cohort of open hardware makers. I'm really looking forward to the next.
Yeah, then are there any open pressing questions we can answer right now? I don't see any in the chat, but if you want, you can leave us any. Are there any big open question on the YouTube channel? No.
Not that I saw. Is there a way to sign up to the newsletter? We will be sending that soon after this call, because we realized that that's part of something we need to do. So yeah, we will be, Cesar, we will be contacting everyone who was part of this cohort for asking for feedback. And we will leave there how to connect with open hardware makers after the cohort. And of course, if you know of any science projects, hardware prototypes that you have for science, and you think they will benefit from this program, you just check your email, because we will be sending you the news. We have some good news. We cannot share them widely yet, so that's why we're not saying anything now here. But we have some good news for our next cohort after August.
All right. I think with that, thank you very much again for joining. Thank you for the participants, for the project leads for presenting their projects. Thank you, everybody. I don't know what to say.
Thank you for those following via YouTube also. And if you want to engage with open hardware makers, just write us an email at the email that is always in all our networks. Best way to connect with us is through our website, openhardware.space. And see you all. Congratulations for finishing this cohort.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Android camera, so it's not working on the desktop. I can try to make a video and share it on the Zulip if you want to see how the things work.
Andrea, are we still streaming?
Not anymore.
Yes, I'm hearing you.